Welcome to the English 339 lecture on Fiction and the Road Narrative in 3 parts. Part 2. Road narratives, or stories set on the open road, are a common genre in American fiction, song, and film. We can all probably name familiar road narratives. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, where the road is a river, the song Born to be Wild, and the film Dumb and Dumber. Road narratives as a genre may be fiction, imaginative, or non-fiction, factual truth, often autobiographical. In this class, we will focus on fictional road narratives. As stories, road narratives depict a series of events associated with travel across a landscape. In addition, road narratives challenge stable character identities by illustrating that identities shift with the changing context. As Ronald Primo argues, in some ways all road trips are protests. People leave home to change the scene, to overcome being defined by custom, tradition, and circumstances back home, and, at least for a while, to construct an alternative way of living. Time on the road creates opportunities to question the existing social order and explore values that run counter to what is dominant in the culture. Travel also provides plenty of opportunity for reflection and comparison, as home is brought into contact with new spaces on the road. As Katie Mills writes, the genre encourages us to imagine new lives, teaching us to rewrite prohibitions into narratives of possibility. The potential of movement contributes to hopefulness. The stages of the road narrative can be connected to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, depicted here in this image, where the hero separates from his world, is initiated into adventure, and returns from his adventures with benefits to society. Here's the hero's journey mapped onto the road narrative. The hero is invited or encouraged to travel. The hero leaves the world he knows. The hero overcomes obstacles. The hero gains greater knowledge or perspective. The hero gains a gift that will benefit society, and then the hero returns home or finds a new home, reintegrating into society more capable than when he or she left. The genre of road narrative stretches back centuries in Western culture, including the Odyssey, Grail narratives associated with King Arthur, Canterbury Tales, Don Quixote, and the Pilgrim's Progress. One technique of the road narrative genre is allusions to prior road narratives. Prior road narratives establish a horizon of expectation for readers and viewers who learn to expect certain elements of the story based on their prior reading and viewing. The more recent road narratives can then play against these expectations, fulfilling them or challenging them to further their own meanings. Originally, the road narrative genre participated in the common narrative style known as romance. A romance in this sense is not a love story, although it may include one. Instead, a romance is a series of adventures about the same characters, often knights on a quest, kind of like episodes in a sitcom. Don Quixote and tales associated with King Arthur are both romances. Don Quixote is also a picaresque, a romance featuring a rogue or a foolish hero. Gulliver's Travels might also be characterized as a romance, as Gulliver goes on 4 more or less unrelated voyages. A romance is a fiction, but it doesn't function like a modern short story or novel that has a plot. A plot unifies a story by focusing on a character facing conflict and making a climactic choice, resulting in resolution of the conflict. Romances don't function this way at all. They can have a series of unconnected events occur, adventures one after the other, and the reader is just following along in their wake. We can consider whether the road narratives we read and view in this course are episodic romances or novels with plots. Roland A. Sherrill argues that the post-1950s American road narrative transforms the picaresque, the episodic romance with a rogue or foolish hero, as an especially useful form of exploring fragmented American society. In the American tradition, road narratives are connected to deeply felt American beliefs, rooted in the American Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Individualism, the self is separate from community of origin and defined by action, freedom of mobility and expression, frontier exploration, the American dream of prosperity resulting from individual effort regardless of class, and progress as a good thing. The Declaration of Independence itself announces, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The assumption rooted in this claim is that any human being owns his own life, has the freedom to do with it what he chooses, and can spend it seeking his own happiness. The Declaration of Independence then continues to indicate that social compacts like governments are formed to secure these rights, and when they do not, they may be abolished. This philosophy sets the individual at odds with any social groups that restrict his freedom, and the road represents a perennially existing space where the individual can separate from social groups that oppress him and make his own path to happiness. The fact that so many Americans of European origin historically have migrated from east to west across the landscape to make their fortunes suggests the American dream is possible. Road narratives are associated with the West as frontier, always presenting the possibility of trading the struggles of urban industrial life for a life more connected with the earth and more oriented toward the adventure of survival on the land. However, while American founding documents promise human rights in theory, American history also speaks to the fortunes of some resulting from the exploitation of others. For slaves, the American road narrative was the deadly middle passage from Africa to slavery, or story of the Underground Railroad, the terrifying and potentially deadly flight to freedom in the North. For Native Americans, as transplanted European Americans began their westward journey, the American road narrative changed from that freedom of the open range to narratives of suffering resulting from experiences like the deadly Trail of Tears in the 1830s, where tribal peoples were forcefully removed from their territories in the southeast and marched to Oklahoma. The reality of the American dream existing for all men is also challenged today by the increasing disparity between the very wealthy and everyone else, as is highlighted by the Occupy Wall Street movement, representing the 99% of Americans whose families and livelihoods are threatened by the failure of government regulation to restrain the greed of the wealthy few. Road narratives are often assumed to belong to white men, as they have traditionally had the most access to freedom in American culture. As Ronald Promote argues, the literature of the American highway has been dominated for the most of its history by the values and attitudes of white males. The road is not necessarily a safe place for women and minorities, whose visibility makes them vulnerable to discrimination, sexual exploitation, and violence. As Lackey comments, the recreational road trip doesn't so much create freedom as express freedom that already exists by virtue of class and race. For those who can't claim the freedom of the road trip, the benefits such as self-discovery and reunification with nature may not exist either. Yet, the selections of readings and films for this class indicate that women and writers from a variety of ethnic groups have reclaimed the genre for themselves. While some tell stories of visibility, vulnerability, discrimination, and threats of rape and violence on the road, others use the genre to rewrite their own identity and claim for themselves the freedom of the open road.